Review, where college professors talk film, providing insight, not assigning homework. I'm your host, Jen Subchukchai-Bankard, and I'm here with three soldiers who just want to go home. We haven't even started the episode yet, and they're like, we want to go home. First, it's not necessary for us to ever tell him that we think he's right. Ever. We'll just assume it. It's PT McNiff. How's it going, PT?
Only time you have to start worrying about a soldier is when he stops bitching. I'm doing great, Jen. How are you?
I'm doing great, especially now that it's confirmed that I chose the right opening prompt for you. And he only feels lonely around people. It's Greg Cass. How's it going, Greg?
So sorry. I was just thinking about this time I made out with Miranda Otto. She is no man. Anyway, Jen, I'm good. How are you?
Wow. I'm great, and I don't know how to respond to that. There are too many things going on in whatever you just said. And who's on the guest list today? He's seen another world. Sometimes he thinks it was just his imagination. It's Anthony King from Force Ghost Conversations. Dude, how are you doing, Anthony?
Are you righteous, kind? Does your confidence lie in this? Are you loved by all? Know that I was too. Do you imagine your suffering will be any less because you loved goodness and truth? I'm doing well, Jen. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Out of context, that sounds very different. All right, welcome, listeners, to the LTR Guest List. It's been a minute. This is our first official full LTR Guest List episode of the year, I believe. This is a special episode series in which we ask our friends to pick a movie, any movie that they want to discuss with us. Anthony is a longtime friend of the show. We originally connected through the Star Wars podcast community. He has Force Ghost Conversations is a Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent podcast. And he has generously hosted all of us at various points, at one time, at all of us at the same time on Force Ghost Conversations.
And we all talk about sharks a lot together is
That's
also
Yes.
part of that history. So when I recently watched the Netflix original film Thrash, I was like, wait, do I have to talk to Anthony about this? Or am I just watching this because it's a boring Thursday night?
That was also my reaction when I watched The Secret Agent. I was like, oh, well, we have to return to Anthony.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, honestly. Now, Greg, was it better than Cruel Jaws?
Yes.
Next.
But not like demonstrably.
Did it have the Star Wars theme in it at all?
No, but I do have to. Now we're just turning this into a Thrash podcast. Welcome to Thrash Pod, everybody. You got sharks, we got a hurricane. Let's see what happens. I did find Diamond Hanju, which I was like, what happened to you? How are you in how are you in Thrash and not in good movies anymore? So.
Hey, the paychecks matter.
True.
You say, not yet, not yet. That's my favorite line of his ever. Anthony, we're so happy to have you on the guest list today. We're going to start off with the guest list pop quiz, which is a series of getting to know you questions for our listeners. So I hope you're ready. What is your favorite film of all time? Not a hard question at all.
So I will forego the Star Wars answer, which is usually what you would think for me. So I'll give the answer that I gave when I was in college and people would ask this question. And the answer is Little Miss Sunshine.
Oh.
That's
What
a good one.
what year is Little Miss Sunshine? PT,
06.
when is that? 06?
2000, yeah, I was going to say 5, but I'll defer to Anthony. It is his favorite movie.
I at least saw it in 06 on the DVD release. So that's usually where it's ingrained in my mind. So around there, post Revenge of the Sith.
Wasn't there a film festival this year that had the bus? Am I remembering that?
Yeah, it was Sundance because it was the 20th anniversary.
Oh, all right. And
That's another one of those movies, though, where they caught all the cast members at like the exact right time in their careers, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
Carell is so good in that. Paul Dano, Eat Your Heart Out. Quentin Tarantino is so good in that. And Alan Arkin, of course, and Tony Collette. I mean, some of those names are just in the always good category. But
If you accept uncompleted scripts, then you can make a Star Wars connection to it if you really want to.
Ooh.
Michael Arndt co-wrote Little Miss Sunshine, and he did not finish The Force Awakens.
Yeah,
Whoa.
so credited on it.
Yeah, he did the best he could, but he couldn't figure out what to do with Luke Skywalker, and then they just decided to do nothing. But after he left, I believe.
He got his
and
money.
all of that worked out just fine with no one complaining about it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Next question. Who is your favorite actor or actress of all time?
I guess I'll say Tom Cruise just because I respect the hustle. But more interestingly, I'd probably say something like Ken Watanabe.
Nice.
If there's anything with him in it, I'll see it. You know, if you check my Letterboxd top 4, it will include Letters from Iwo Jima, as well as Little Miss Sunshine on there. And, you know, love him in the Godzilla films. Last Samurai is another pleasure of mine as well. And he's just fantastic in all of that. So, yeah, Ken Watanabe.
What's he been up to post the Gareth Edwards movie, The Creator?
Oh, yeah. He was in the... Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He was in The
Is
Creator.
that his last movie?
I thought you were saying Gareth Edwards is Godzilla. And
No.
it's like, oh, he's been in a couple of those.
He, of course, as we all know, was in Kokuho, the
right, Greg saw that.
movie.
Yeah, Greg.
I knew that.
Sorry on that one.
I thought it was so obvious it wasn't worth saying.
Yeah.
Yes, I recall.
He also has been in 2 movies directed by Japanese directors, I assume. They have very Japanese names. A movie called The Final Piece, and another one this year called Samurai Vengeance.
Ooh.
So I think maybe he's back in Japan, making movies there.
So when we're
makes
back
sense.
for the next one, it'll be for Samurai Vengeance, right?
Done.
I'll say that's why has that title not been taken already? Like that's even
It's true.
It's a
All right.
remake of a 1950s Kurosawa classic.
All right. Next question. What is a film you think is underrated?
Well, I could mention the film today that we're here talking about, but for the sake of what we'll eventually talk about later today, I will forego that one. And you know, I'm actually, if I can I break the rules a little bit? One film.
Yes.
I'm gonna
All right.
list off 3 here for different reasons. Because what does underrated mean? It's a lot of things, right? I'm gonna say for the first one here, a movie that you know was, I would say, really well received by critics, but no one saw it of late. Was a film called Better Man, which was the Robbie Williams biopic where he is a monkey in the movie, and it is fantastic. I knew nothing about Robbie Williams, as I imagine most of the American audience would have, and that's why it didn't make pretty much more than $1 million here in the States. But it's on Paramount Plus, and it's quite an enjoyable watch with some great visual effects. And if you're looking for a great musical biopic, then you look no further, and you're going to learn a lot. And it's a fascinating tale about the rise of stardom and what it does to somebody. So that would be the first underrated film there on that front. Now, the other one, one of the other ones I would say is, you can probably talk a lot about films that are like 70, 80 years old that are underrated just because time has passed and who's still watching these films? Me. I'm a big fan of the Criterion Collection. And there's a great film on the Criterion Collection called To Be or Not to Be, which is a World War II era comedy. And folks, if you haven't seen the To Be or Not to Be yet, you should definitely put it on your list because it's one of the funniest films I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it holds up greater than ever. And especially in this era of fighting fascism that we live in nowadays, we could all use a good laugh and fight fascists at the same time. It's a win-win. So make sure you go check that out. And then lastly, an underrated film, which I think is more in the line of what this question is asking for here, is what's kind of like that guilty pleasure film that wasn't received well by critics that I will put on no matter what. And that answer, going back to my previous answer about Tom Cruise, is Tom Cruise's 2017 film, The Mummy. I like it a lot. It's a great action romp. It's not the Brendan Fraser fun of those films. It's a different set of movies, and it was set to start its own Dark Universe franchise. Rest in peace. It did not go anywhere beyond that. But it's definitely worth some fun. Good watch, and I put it on occasionally, probably once a year, and it's a great time.
Is Russell Crowe supposed to be Dr. Jekyll in that movie? Is that the reveal?
And Mr. Hyde, yes.
Okay. Yeah. That comes out. It's all part of the Dark Universe, Jen. Yeah.
Wow.
Is it a special Universal logo that was going to be with all the movies? And then this failed so badly that they were like, we're not doing this.
Great time.
But don't they have a portion of the new theme park that's themed that way?
They just call it Dark Universe. But it is just like an amalgam of all the characters from their 30s iterations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they've done a couple Wolfmans over the years, and there's the recent
We have
Invisible
a
Man.
Mummy that's in theaters right now.
That's true.
I
Lee
was thinking
Cronin's the
that
Mummy.
when you said that, I'd have something pithy to say if I'd actually made it out to it yet, but I did not rush to that one.
You did not rush out to Lee Cronin's The Mummy, Greg.
I'll throw in the shout out to the Monkey Man movie, to the Robbie Williams. The really bizarre thing I loved about that, this is so dumb. Jen, get ready to cut this here. But they show that when he was little, and maybe all his life, he licked the flavors off chips or crisps because he's British.
Mhm.
And I did that when I was little. Like I would get a cheese Dorito and I'd just like lick the cheese off and then eat the chip, which is pretty disgusting. But I was like, I've never felt seen at the movies before, and here I am. This tiny little monkey is just like me.
I will second the shout out for To Be or Not to Be. I also love that movie. That movie's really good. There also was a remake in the 80s that was starring, but not maybe co-written by, but not directed by Mel Brooks, with Mel Brooks and his wife Anne Bancroft in the Jack Benny and Jack Benny's wife in the movie role. But
Is it still World
Jewish
War II?
actors. Yes, it's set at the same time. I mean, it's Mel Brooks making fun of Hitler. He loves to do
Got
that.
it. Yeah.
And so it's Jewish actors in not Germany, but a conquered by Germany part of Europe in World War II, who are trying to put on Hamlet and Shakespeare plays, but also trying to get out. And it's like, it's funny, but also like kind of terrifying. And the original is interesting because it's like made in 1942, 43.
Yeah. 42.
And, it's very current events. And also people don't really know fully what's going on, but they know bad things are going on and they don't know what's going to happen in the long run. So similar to Casablanca, where you're like, oh, this is so interesting. Oh, wait, like they were making this blind. They were making this without knowing the outcome of the next few years. It makes it more interesting to watch.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of looking up older films of the era that showcase, I want to say, like, there's a myth around The Greatest Generation and that of that era that they will say, like, well, we didn't know anything, right, that was going on, right? Whether it's the people that actually lived in Europe that were surrounded by camps around them, or people in the United States being like, we didn't really know until we got over there, and then we just kind of stumbled upon the camps. But concentration camps are very much a part of these films and these stories, and these were massively produced and widely watched films of the era globally too at that time. So like it was there, guys. That's some revisionist history. Don't let history be misconstrued for what it actually was. Like people were very much aware of things, and for a more deeper dive look into what America did know at that time, check out Ken Burns's United States and the Holocaust on PBS. Support your local PBS.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, I'm not going to touch that. That was great.
I was going to say, it only gets heavier once we get into the actual movie.
I know, right? Yeah.
That's right.
It's just
We'll go to the other side of the globe.
All right. So here's your chance to the claws come out a little bit. What's a film that you think is overrated?
Yeah, I'll give again, I'll break the rules a bit and give you two answers here. And one is breaking the rules just because I've technically never seen it other than the way that it was intended to be seen, which is in 15-second clips on TikTok. And that would be a film from last summer that involved a particular dog that Greg does not think is real at all. That would be Superman 25, I think is what it's called. I've not seen it fully together. I've just seen it in various clips here and there. And from what I can tell, I'm like, what movie did people watch? I don't really know if there's a coherent plot or a thing going on with this movie. I'm not sure it really adds to the mythos at all about the character. So I don't know. I don't plan on seeing it in its entirety from start to finish, but I think what I can gander from the roughly hour and a half of clips I've seen from just checking my phone every now and then has really not put a great picture at the end of the day for that one. But for a film I have seen in its entirety that I think is a good movie, and it's an okay movie, I think. Those are mutually similar terms in my opinion. Is keeping in the DC realm. It came out a few years ago. It'll be Matt Reeves' The Batman. I think it's a good movie, but I think there are people that make it their entire personality to think it's the greatest film that's ever been created. and I just don't see that personally myself. And I think because of that, it is quite overrated in what it represents. And for 3 hours, I feel like I could definitely have cut it down to at least 2:15 and gotten the same point across.
Woo, okay. Wow. You really delivered on that question. It's incredible. Shots fired all over the place. More shots fired than in the movie we're about to discuss in the main review.
That's right.
I just want to backdoor some CinemaCon coverage, because if people missed it, the Millie Alcock Supergirl revealed on stage that there is no dog; it's all CG, and I think Warner Brothers just wanted to burn everything down. They just want to sell the studio and quit making movies now, because she gave away the secret that Crypto is a CG monstrosity and there's no actual dog. Period. At the end.
I can't believe that was thought of as a secret. I will say I deeply respect the idea that I watched a bunch of 15-second clips, and I don't think the story holds together. That's a strong critique. So well done.
Yeah, now I feel like we have to have Carl from Wampa's Lair on as like a rebuttal. If we really want,
but it's not going to change my opinion.
No, and you won't change his either. Like that's
it would have to be the Batman versus Superman. And we got to talk about both movies, and you guys just fight, and we will make comments about it.
Yeah, to quote Ken Watanabe, "Let them fight."
Let them fight.
I just want to be on record that I like Crypto. And I like Superman, and I like the Batman. I'm sorry, I just need to have that be on record and not stay silent. But I respect the
yes.
I respect the answer nonetheless.
Last year's Superman is pretty good. But the people who rate it really highly are overrating it. But I think it's pretty good. Anthony, you might want to give it a shot at some point, maybe down the road.
Are you just out on James Gunn? I have a lot of follow-up questions. Are you out on James Gunn in general?
I've been out on James Gunn since the tweets that he never really apologized for, personally. So there's that front, but I will say that I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the worst of the MCU. So that's another hot take there, but I don't know if I want to go into that too much. But
okay, we'll save it for another episode.
Future episode.
Now I'm like. Now my producer brain is percolating, and I'm like, maybe we need to do a superhero episode, some kind of superhero draft, or a superhero episode where we bring a bunch of people on and just lay the gauntlet down and try everyone let their takes fly.
The bat gauntlet. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So last question. I don't know how we topped the last one though, but if you can pick one genre of film to watch for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I think drama will be the thing, right? Because there's so much that can be underneath the heading of what is a drama. You could probably put this film that we're going to talk about today under that category. Other films of the historical epic and period piece will probably fit under that, and that's usually what I watch on outside of the Star Wars epics that I usually put on otherwise from this type of. So those are kind of the two things that we have on regularly in our household.
Nice. That's a very strategic answer. I like it. You really thought about the hypothetical there. All right. So, as you mentioned, the film we are here to discuss today is The Thin Red Line, the 1998 war epic directed by Terrence Malick and starring. We can name them, but I didn't want to type them all out. So, starring just about every young and up and coming actor in the 90s. When I went to watch this, I was shocked, gobsmacked at oh wait, this person's in this movie too. It was crazy. It is adapted from a 1962 novel by James Jones and fictionalizes the Battle of Mount Austin, which took place during the Guadalcanal campaign in the South Pacific during World War II. Hopefully I got all my facts right there. The film was nominated for 7 Oscars and has been called one of the best films about war of all time, I think including Anthony on Letterboxd has basically said that in his review that I saw. And unlike our regular reviews, we are going to start in spoiler mode from the beginning so that we can kind of feel unencumbered. The guests are here to really deep dive on the film, so we don't want to hinder that by being dancing around spoilers. So if you've not yet seen The Thin Red Line and don't want it spoiled, hit pause. it's been around for a while, so I don't know what you're doing listening to us with not having seen this movie. But hit pause and return to us once you've seen it. I watched it by buying it on Apple TV for $4.99. I think Greg did the same thing. I couldn't find it streaming anywhere. I mean, yes, physical media.
Get that Criterion out there.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right.
Just a pause while we all admire physical media.
I know,
Sounds like
that was
you
great.
nerds. Just continue on.
That's the one way to get all of you to shut up is to flash physical media in front of you, right? I got to keep that in mind for future. I just have a stack of like 4Ks next to me to be like, woo. Hey,
The
let's
director-approved
focus.
Blu-ray.
Pay attention.
How else would you know that Terry Malick recommends you play the movie very loud on your sound system if you don't have the
Oh, wow.
Blu-ray?
Oh,
Where else can you see the Mickey Rourke scene?
That's right. That's right. Another actor that's in this movie, but not in it.
No, we're going to get into the people who didn't make it into the movie.
Yeah, I was
Don't worry
gonna say
about it, Jen.
I did read today that the original cut of this movie I believe was 5 hours. So
One cut was 5 hours.
right. Oh, like that wasn't the first one. There was a longer one than that. Okay,
Jen,
we'll
there
get
is
into it.
okay, we'll get into it. Yeah.
We'll get into it. But first, yeah. So you can see we're already chomping at the bit to talk about this movie. But first, PT, if listeners want to charge a hill with us after listening to this episode, what can they do?
If you enjoy the way we look at the sunshine through the lightly blowing fronds of a palm as we stare into the sky, then you can follow the Long Take Review wherever you get your podcasts. We host the feed on Jen's Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. But you can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, and many more. Wherever you're listening right now, you can find us there. You can also find us on social media. We are on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. We are also on Letterboxd. You can follow the account at LTR Pod, or you can search for the hashtag LTR Pod to see what each of us individually has been watching. Jen?
Wait, PT, you're telling me that thelongtake.substack.com, where I read the most fascinating reviews of Mall Shadow Lord, there's also a podcast on that same feed?
That's right, Greg. And it's actually this podcast that people are listening to right now. So you can get both sides of the cultural coin. You can get almost 30-year-old Terrence Malick World War II movies. You can also get the latest fresh off the assembly line episodes of Mall Shadow Lord reviewed and deep dove into.
That's crazy because those reviews are really good, and we always bury the plugs to them at the very end of the episode when people have definitely tuned out. So it's really good to kind of throw those in earlier.
I agree, Greg.
Anyway.
It was smart to do it right after the spoiler warning, so everyone who hasn't seen the movie has stopped listening.
Nobody who's watching Shadow Lord has missed Thin Red Line. That's
you
my
know what?
guarantee.
Um,
All right, back to you, Jen.
That was
Wow,
a great short take, Greg.
I appreciate that, Greg. We're back. We're focused. Here's a 4K. Look at the 4K. Now we're back on track. Okay, so we're going to start, as always, with the short take. Anthony, tell us a little bit about why you've chosen this movie and kind of your overall take on it.
So in 1947, in April, Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier in baseball. 3 months later, Larry Doby is the second player to break the color barrier, but the first to break the color barrier for the American League. In 1998, a film called Saving Private Ryan comes out in July. And then in December, The Thin Red Line comes out. And much like Larry Doby, this is often forgotten because they weren't the first to come out. Mm-hmm. So because of that, I wanted to give it its time in the sun because, there are many a podcast that talks about Saving Private Ryan. Rightfully so. It's an incredible movie that is a perfect companion piece, I would say, to this film for a variety of reasons. And because I wanted to quote a particular podcast that maybe someone on this show guests on regularly, this movie asks more questions than it answers. It's very much a philosophical diatribe into the psyche of war and what it does to humanity. And I could think of no better place to talk about it than with three professors and to go really deep into the thematical elements of this thing and to just explore further about what we can extrapolate from a film that is based on a historical fiction novel based off of someone's real life experiences in the Second World War that we can apply to ourselves today and what we can try to be better people about afterwards after seeing this thing. So that's why I chose it. And my overall take is this is a fantastic movie. It is definitely a subverting the expectations kind of movie, right? And the vein of watching a Saving Private Ryan, and then you put this on as a double feature afterwards, you're going to be, whoa, that's different, but different in a good way, right? This is if Saving Private Ryan is a reconstructive piece about the Greatest Generation, and it's a love letter to that kind of generation, and definitely Spielberg saying, "I love you" to my dad, thank you for everything that you did and giving us freedom, right? This is the deconstructive piece that really breaks down what it actually means to be in war, what it does to humanity, why it destroys everything around us. Right? If we're putting our Milton hats on, this is really the destruction of Paradise Lost in art form, right? And Malick really does a great job at the destruction of Eden and the way it plays out in this story here. This isn't necessarily art for the sake of creating a story. This is art for art's sake, and to tell us an incredible philosophical look at why the world is the way we are because of the choices that we make, and it really makes the case of what original sin is after we leave Eden and the impacts that it has on humanity afterwards. And happy to dive into all that with the three of you here over the course of however long we're doing this episode here today, because we might be here for just as long as the movie is, and I welcome that challenge.
That is the long take promise.
It's the Force Ghost promise too.
Greg, let's hear your short take. What had you seen this before we planned this episode?
I had not, and I think Anthony's opening comments really pinpointed why. And we actually had a house guest here, and she brought up Saving Private Ryan out of the blue when I was headed up to watch Thin Red Line. And for whatever reason in 1998, Saving Private Ryan was like a huge deal that you had to go see. Like, I was like 15, and it's very weird that I was like, I got to go opening weekend to go see Saving Private Ryan. And it feels like a lot of people did. And so I do remember this coming out, and, as Anthony alluded to, it was kind of like, oh, well, we already did that this year. And people I knew who did see it said it was so much less of like a war movie, right? Like, and I think Anthony's comments, I hesitate to say that because Anthony's comments demonstrate, like, I think it might be more of a war movie, but it's much less entertaining in so many ways because that's not the aim of it. And I found myself as I sat down to this and not really knowing what to expect. It actually is a really nice companion piece, like Anthony said, because like, oh, here comes the dramatic beach. Oh, wait, they just landed. It's over. Like we're not worrying about that this time around, and a few other beats that kind of feel like responses, even though I don't think they could possibly be in the kind of production schema of it. But I found this really enjoyable. One thing that struck me a decent chunk into the movie is I don't recall seeing a lot of grassland battles in film. Like, to me, when I think of World War II, it's either Europe or it's jungle, right? Or it's a Vietnam movie. There's so many more Vietnam movies than there are movies sent in the Pacific theater during World War II. And I was like, oh, like I just assumed they were going to cross this field and get to the jungle. And we spend a long time on the hillsides and in kind of seeing battle in that way. And I do think without the kind of hyper accurate violence of Saving Private Ryan, this just felt very visceral in a lot of ways. And one thing I just, this is a little bit of a stray observation, but the explosions in this were not the like classic cowboy explosions where you see the puff of dirt and there's a guy like leaping in front of them by 10 feet that the camera makes looks there. I was like, oh, that guy was like wholly in that cloud of dirt when it blasted. And so it just, little touches like that made me think like, oh, this is like, we're really in it. And I thought it was really great. And I regret that I had to sit and kind of break it up into a couple viewings just with how busy my weekend was. And it was kind of, I always gave it my full attention, but I was like, oh, this would be such a better experience kind of in a dark theater, just completely locked in. But yeah, PT, I'll pass it over to you because you love war and the cruelty of humanity. So what'd you
this movie's selling something I ain't buying. Oh, philosophy, I guess. What if we just blow people up? No, I think based on how the conversation has gone so far, and also just the numbers of age difference. This is the window of time where it really matters. Like I was in college when Greg and Jen would have been in or early in high school, and Anthony was in a crib. I think I don't know how old you were. Yeah,
Wow.
and so I saw this in the theater when it came out. I was one of the people who went to go add to its $90 million global box office, which is nothing like Saving Private Ryan. But I remember going to see it on like a Sunday morning at like 11:30 in the morning after a long extended party the night before and having slept for about 3 hours. And with a bunch of the people who were at the party, we all were like movie nerds. We were like, let's go see this movie from this guy who hasn't made a movie in 20 years. And we went, and this is an interesting movie to be half asleep for the duration of, and to go in when it's very bright and sunny out, and leave when it's also still sunny out. But you're in a dark room watching what happens in this movie unfold. My main memory of it was A, that it was very good, but B, that I respected it more than I liked it. But it was just probably because it was much more difficult than I was thinking it was going to be. I did go in thinking that some of the big names would have big roles, and they're in for like 2 minutes. So that was weird. And not knowing all of the young actors, I definitely got at least 3 of them confused, to the point that when our main character dies and is buried, I thought he was standing over his own grave. Because there's a line earlier in the movie about like, I think I saw myself, or like I saw a different world, but I don't know if that's true. And I'm like, oh my God, he's seeing his own burial, but it just was a different actor who I couldn't tell them apart. And watching it this time. So this is the first time I've seen it since then. I always was like, great movie, but like, I don't really want to see it again. Again, I respect it. So watching it this time, I paid attention. And it was poor Ben Chaplin, who I thought was Jim Caviezel. I forget how to pronounce his name. Caviezel, thank you.
Jesus.
And so, those are the 2 guys that I got confused. They're very prominent through the whole movie. I clearly fell asleep for part of it the first time, and that's why I couldn't tell them apart. But anyway, watching again this time, I again was sort of leaning towards, do I actually like this? But I think that it is really well made, and it has so much to say, and it has these like really, like as Greg was sort of saying, visceral battle sequences that show it's not like we don't have the goods to give you the war movie that you want, but we're not going to do that. Like we're going to do it in this different way. And the quiet reflective moments I do think are very effective. I now own it on because it was on the Apple Store for the same $5 price. I do not have a 4K or a Blu-ray yet. So I don't know how many times I'll go back to my library and be like, yes, I'm going to put this in. But I do feel like I will be revisiting it again in the future, because I'm like, yeah, this is really well done. And I agree with Anthony that, it was set up at the time. I can confirm this, of like, it's this weird arty alternative to Saving Private Ryan, which was also arty, but was more popular. But I think there's a lot of interesting thematic, structural, conceptual parallels and contrasts to make there. And I'll also say I've never watched Saving Private Ryan after seeing it in the theater either. I've only seen it in the theater once and been like, great movie, I don't want to see that again. But I will watch it again at some point, but I've never done it.
I can hold up that one. That one's in arm's reach from where I am.
Nice.
Look at that 60th anniversary edition.
Mm-hmm.
So I had never seen this movie at all before we were scheduled to record this episode. And so this was my first time watching it yesterday and today. Like Greg, I had to break it up. I think I didn't look up the runtime. And so I sat down at like 9:30 last night and was like, all right, let's do this. And I was like, oh, wait, I cannot watch all of this right now. But I think I began to understand. I felt like I learned about Anthony while watching this movie, because suddenly your choice when you came on for our Oscar guest list show and you wanted to talk about, give a shout out to the cinematography in Train Dreams. Suddenly I was like, oh, this is like now establishing a pattern. I now understand. I feel like I understand your film taste more, which was really fun. And the only other Terrence Malick movie I had seen before watching this one was The Tree of Life, which I don't really remember much about, other than I remember I did not like it. And and I think watching this movie, I kind of like, so I was a little hesitant going into this. I'm like, Terrence Malick, I don't know. He's the Tree of Life guy. I don't remember liking that movie. And then I was kind of within a few minutes, I was like, oh, this is actually about something. Great. that made me really happy. And just like the cinematography in this, I just to echo what you're probably going to say, or what I imagined in my head that you were saying, because I knew that you liked the cinematography in Train Dreams. It's just like jaw-droppingly beautiful. All the shots of the natural world, of the animals and the grass and the trees. And I know that like Terrence Malick is like stereotypically like characterized as like the touch grass director, right? But I felt like it really worked and did a lot for the film. And in terms of my engagement like with World War II content, I'm gonna second what Greg was sort of saying about the like not having seen many World War II movies that take place in this part of the world, because I think my only reference point before watching this movie was probably the Rodgers and Hammerstein musical South Pacific, which for listeners who don't know, that movie include musical numbers that are titled Some Enchanted Evening, and I'm going to wash that man right out of my hair. So like a very, very different tone and very different approach. So watching this movie definitely seemed kind of like intellectual whiplash away from my memories of watching that film as a child many, many times. And so I think it's doing a lot. I love a movie that has a lot to say, and this movie clearly does. I think this is probably, I anticipate being one of our juiciest and like easiest to talk about thesis please that we've had in a while, because it's like, I think it's the, you know, if the movie were a writer, I would say there's like high control, right, in terms of like what it's trying to say and what it's trying to put together in terms of the story. I do have some notes. I mean, I think part of my viewing experience, I did fall into what PT was saying of the like, I respect this, but am I actually enjoying it? Is this not over yet? I think I had a little bit of that. And again, part of that might have been because I watched it at home in 2 parts and I felt a little bit of that fatigue. But otherwise, I was really happy that I had an excuse to finally catch this one. All right. So now we're getting into the long take, the good stuff. The first question that I think we'll tackle is, and we've started to get at it a little bit already, but let's put a more of a pin on it. What exactly makes Malick's portrayal of war, and in particular of World War II, different from, say, a Saving Private Ryan or these other movies that we're kind of like vaguely and obliquely referencing?
Well, I mean, I'll just dive in a little bit here to start. And I think really the answer here is I don't think this movie really gets made in the way that it does without the auteur style of Malick. And I say that without ever seeing any other film or piece of footage that Malick has shot for any of his other properties, but just from my ancillary research about him and looking into the behind the scenes of this movie, which are fascinating, and I can't wait to talk about that a little bit more with you all. Is his approach to filmmaking is vastly different. Like if you give the same script to Spielberg, it's not going to come out the same way. Obviously, I don't think all like the nature shots are going to happen in this in the way that they are, because he seems to be a very transcendentalist auteur. Like nature is very much a part of his photography and the moving image that he tries to provoke. And through that, this is the only way you're going to get this. Now, I don't know if everybody has seen the 1964 version of The Thin Red Line, which I have seen a little bit of, actually. It's nowhere comparable to this movie at all. So that definitely shows that Malick was taking some I wouldn't say liberties with the story at all, but just his interpretation of it and through the script that he was given and worked with, because I know he did a lot of rewrites too on set. There's whole scenes with John Travolta and Nick Nolte that were cut out entirely. Then you're just like, you guys don't need to memorize your lines, just figure it out. So a lot of things here only happen because of Malick. And I think everyone's kind of hinting at was like, there is, although it's not the majority of this movie, right? It's not action set piece, action set piece, action set piece. This is a really interesting and unique take on the World War II fighting style. And I want to speak to this about one part here in particular, which is the fact that or in this particular scene where it's like a squad of 6 or so guys that are stuck kind of in this no man's land of sorts near the bunker that they've been trying to capture for the entirety of the time. And eventually they're just so close to the bunker that a couple of the Japanese soldiers are just going to try and attack them in hand-to-hand combat. And through the way that they shoot the image and how that's this very close up in your face, like they can see each other kind of deal, is you can actually see where um, the weaponry is such a different take on how that's portrayed. And meaning what I mean by that is like this is one of the instances where you can see why the Americans having a semi-automatic rifle is important, right? Versus a bolt action rifle, right? Because they're able to just keep pulling the trigger as long as they have a round in the chamber versus having to reload it manually, whereas the Japanese soldiers are using bolt action weapons and have to utilize that, right? So Malik's use of editing and just being upfront and personal with that whole endeavor is just so viscerally done that it gives this added tension to the sequence and just a greater understanding of the Pacific War in a way that I don't think has really been captured on film since. And there's I want to add to this story for the conversation's sake some history behind what is going on here. So the Battle of Guadalcanal and the Guadalcanal campaign originally starts in August of 1942. So we're roughly 7 or so months beyond December. Pearl Harbor happens. There have been a couple major sea battles, mainly being Coral Sea and Midway, that have kind of stopped Japanese expansion with their naval capacities, right? But there's still a lot of territory in the Pacific, and so Guadalcanal is really the first place where there is combat between United States forces and the Japanese army. As we start this island hopping campaign, it's the first stop on that space there. And the importance of Guadalcanal is that it's basically right beside Australia in the Pacific island chain known as the Solomon Islands. So it's in this middle ground in between New Zealand and Australia, and that would cut off a lot of the supplies if they had finished building that airfield, which you see later in the movie, Henderson Field. So the importance of capturing that airfield was really pivotal. But long story short, getting ahead to where we're at this point in the movie, which is actually in roughly late December, early January of 1943, is where the story takes place, the tail end of the Guadalcanal campaign. So what that means is basically in early December, the Japanese have basically decided we can't feed these troops anymore. They're starving. We're going to start pulling off our teams and start defending other places more strategically. So these guys are coming in at the tail end of this battle here, which is why they land on the island with no fanfare whatsoever, no resistance or anything like that. And that's why, frankly, they're going up against this like heavily fortified hill that has like maybe 3 or 4 pillboxes with a couple machine guns in it, and they're just getting eviscerated, right? These guys are just as green. They did not experience any combat before, so they're getting their first taste of that. And these are guys from the 40s that have maybe never even fired a gun before. And then in the hoopla of Pearl Harbor and feeling this massive wave of patriotism, said, I'm signing up. And now they're seeing a dead body for the first time. They're hearing gunshots go off. They're seeing explosions and all that. So it's wild to think that like this is the tail end of the battle and this is what happens. And ultimately, they don't even mention that this is really Guadalcanal until I think like midway through the movie. And I think that's important to note that it really doesn't matter, right? Like this is just nameless island in the Pacific. What's the point? What are we doing here? We're just killing each other. And I think that just harkens to the point of what Malik is trying to prove here, is that like war is ultimately futile, right? It's there is evil that exists in nature, and there is conflict in nature, but it usually resolves itself. And war is like to the advent, fullest to the extreme point of where that goes with this, and to the point that it demoralizes everybody. And I think Malik does an incredible job, and I feel like he's the only one that's able to tell the story in this way. And in order to achieve that, so I'll get off my soapbox a little bit here, and I'll let some others have some thoughts and opinions, and happy to add any more historical anecdotes that I can.
For listeners, I think we do need to reiterate, Anthony, you are the youngest of us, even though you have a 58-year-old man's understanding of military history.
Yeah.
And you're not sitting in front of an entire library of Time Life books that are just the history of
I have
Pacific.
many of those Time Life World War II
Okay.
stories, actually.
You.
Okay.
Just
Well,
a few.
that's good.
They're a great eBay find and a thrift store find. That was a Christmas gift for me over the years.
Nice. Okay. Well, duly noted, listeners. If you're looking, I think all that was incredibly well said, and I learned stuff I clearly didn't know about the sort of where it places in history. I think you're very right that like it is designed to sort of be like, yeah, we could name drop the Guadalcanal. We could name drop the actual sort of battle, the name of the hill, which I say I can do that as if I can recall exactly what it is. But it's
Isn't it like a number
Mount
210?
Austin. Yeah,
There we
Hill
go.
210.
Mount Austin, Battle of Mount Austin. But yeah, I think what's really interesting and my maybe reductive takeaway from knowing less about this is I feel like what's interesting about this movie is it is a World War II set movie that has a World War I movie mindset, which is like all we're doing is fighting back and forth for this little bit of territory, and who cares? And we're all dying, and we're dying for nothing, and this means nothing. Where usually like World War II, when people tell those stories, there's usually the trauma and there's usually the like, what have we done? And humanity is awful. But there is still that like just war underpinning to it all about like, well, like one side was the bad guys and like we were the good guys, right? And so like it's cool, like, we had to do it this one time. And that's maybe easier or more cleaner narrative in Europe where there's some back and forth, but basically it's like we hit D-Day and then we're sort of marching with some wins and losses towards Berlin, and that's a clear direction. Whereas out in the Pacific, if you're not just on the boats and kind of, or in the air, it's these grinds that is back to, it's not trench warfare, it's hill warfare, but it's still like just people being ground up for what in the end, which is where a bunch of the characters, certainly Sean Penn's character, ends up in the movie being like, okay, I guess that was cool. That was all so we could do this. Fun. And I don't know, there's something interesting about that, especially in, this era. Like it feels like the late 90s was maybe the last time that you could tell a World War II story and assume that everybody who watches it is going to know the main references and all the details. And maybe that's not true. Maybe I'm immediately thinking about things from the 2000s would be like, oh, but they also did this. But I think that, it's enough time has gone by. It's been 50 years, it's been, 2.5 generations since this happened, where, it still feels like it's the beginning of maybe some of the actual battles. Maybe the actual war itself was, as futile as any other war. It isn't just World War II standing in for Vietnam, or World War II as a switch off from World War I of like we had this noble cause, but instead it's the like, yeah, all of this just really sucks, you guys, as a statement about war.
Well, I think you kind of just stole my point in your wrap up, but I will say I was struck when you were like, oh, it's a World War I movie disguised as a World War II movie, because when Anthony was talking, was thinking, oh, that sounds like it's a Vietnam movie, not about it. And so I think you are right to kind of draw across this that means it's speaking not to any conflict but to all conflict, and so many of the ways in which it frames the kind of the plight of man and the illness of war certainly are kind of widely applicable. And then I found myself when you were speaking about these young guys who haven't seen bodies yet and like they're just thrown into it, and you get very much here the kind of class of officers versus the enlisted men and those interactions. I was immediately thinking of my generation, which, after 9/11, a lot of my high school class marched off to the recruiting zone and said, I'm going to go get even for America. And so I was like, yeah, so it's really a war on terror movie, which of course it can't be because it's 1998 and it is not possible. But again, I think that speaks to the universality of these themes, and that and PT also stole this point earlier. So shame on you, PT, for being so smart and so fast. But I do think there that like the moments that start to feel like a traditional war movie And then I get excited. I'm like, oh, here comes a cool siege. Like they're going to like duck around this rock and it's going to be, they're going to sneak in the bunker and oh, he's throwing a grenade in and oh, it's fire. You then like feel incredibly guilty that you got jazzed up about it. And I think Malick wants to call out, we'll just call it jingoism for shorthand of like, yeah, it's all a losing, right? It's DJ from Last Jedi, right? Like it doesn't matter. You just, whichever side is winning, we're all losing. So I do think there's a lot of that kind of indicts the audience, which is maybe why it's not as rewatchable as something like Saving Private Ryan in some ways, right? That it's challenging you. And that's what, as Anthony's opening comments say, art should challenge you. So that was my long-winded way of saying I agree with a bunch of things that have been said already. Jen, over to you.
Well, I'm going to try to transition us into the next question because I do think that this movie is doing all that it can essentially to kind of resist the trope, like the conventions of Hollywood filmmaking. And one of the big things about which is what makes it so interesting. And one of the big things about that, or that's contributing to that, I think, is the idea that we have this huge list of all these actors and all of these characters, and some of them are only on screen for like 5 minutes. And like I think PT is the one who alluded to this, where like, oh, like they're like George Clooney is billed as being in this movie, and he's in the last like 3 minutes. You know what I mean? Like it's and I remember I kept being the whole time being like, so when's George Clooney going to show up? Like that seems weird. Like it seems like we've passed the point where new people can show up, and then he shows up at the very end. But I wanted to ask a question about that in the sense that like, because that actually, I think I was reading some kind of like reviews from 1998 about the movie, and it seemed to be its biggest criticism, that a lot of critics sort of saw this as like diffuse and kind of aimless, and like it wasn't anchored with a main character, or we didn't get to know the characters well enough because we're only with each one of them for a few minutes. So like just wanted to get everybody's take on that in terms of like, why do you think that was a choice that Malick made? What is it? How does that actually contribute and enrich the movie potentially?
So spiritually, I will say it enhances the movie because it just harkens the fact that these are just normal people. They're everyday people. The nameless youth of America that are going off to war to fight on this unknown rock in the middle of the Pacific, and we'll do this countless number of times until we win. Right. It is like I was saying in my preamble, this is a deconstructive piece of the greatest generation myth. Right, that World War II is the good war, and there was nothing like people have said already, like there were bad things in the war, but we had to do it for the noble causes of defeating tyranny and fascism. And to some degree that is true, yes, but this is the everyday experience, right? What's so great about this movie is that it's almost like a book in some ways, where you actually hear the inner monologues. Like, I know that's the thing that a lot of people don't like about this movie too, but I personally love, because I know I've heard a couple times that you don't know if you'll rewatch this movie again in the near future, but I kind of come to this movie about every 6 months or so, just because I learn so much more about humanity, I feel like, every time. And like I said, it asks more questions than it answers, but I feel like I get a little bit more insight into the answers that Malick tries to propose every time I watch it beyond that. So I like what it represents, but I also understand the criticism of like the bait and switch of, oh my gosh, all these people are supposed to be in this movie, and then you kind of are thrown to the wolves a little bit if you're expecting a whole lot of Adrian Brody in this movie. Speaking of Adrian Brody in this movie, I do want to give some behind the scenes details about this. Like I was noting earlier, there is an assembly cut of this movie that's 5 hours long, but overall there was over 1 million feet worth of footage captured for this movie. So beyond the 5 hour cut, like how much of that, what equates to 1 million feet of footage? I have no idea. That seems like there's a lot on the cutting table there because of that. And apparently, I don't know, again, I've never seen anything beyond this movie from Malick, but I've heard that he is a guy that loves the editing bay. They spent 7 to 8 months editing this movie, which is a long time of post-production work on this thing. And Malick is apparently not unknown to just throw and splice random things together and do all that and just completely change what the movie they thought they were making into what actually happens on screen that you see later on. So apparently Adrian Brody was cast and billed to be the lead actor of this movie, the protagonist, the everything, right? And then he didn't know until the premiere, and he saw it, that he was actually only in it for roughly 5 minutes and had 2 lines in the movie. So he was very upset after seeing that. Of course, 2-time Academy Award winning Best Actor. He went on to have a pretty good career for himself. So he doesn't have anything to hold his head on. But I can imagine in 1998 thinking that he was going to be the next big thing because of this movie. Didn't actually turn out that way. And there are many actors that aren't even in this movie that are very highly acclaimed actors, right? Mickey Rourke is only included in the deleted scene on the Criterion, but he's cut from the movie entirely. Bill Pullman cut entirely from the movie. Martin Sheen entirely cut from the movie. Very, very highly acclaimed actors. George Clooney has a lot more that's on the cutting room table that is only in this for that brief second. John Travolta also only a cameo in this movie. Who knows what else is out there? I mean, there's a whole other movie of not included footage in this that they could have made and released instead. And I'm curious what that actually, what different story you would get from that. So that's why I'm saying, like, this is only a Malick production because of that and his approach. But apparently it was so interesting on set to the actors, like Woody Harrelson, for example, right, where he had finished filming and then he stayed around for a month longer just to watch Malick's process, because they'd be filming in the middle of a war sequence. And then he'd see like a snake or a bat or something like that, and then just like cut the camera over and not even pay attention to the bullets that are being fired or the explosion that's going off. Right? Like that's crazy that you would do something like that, but it works out in the end cut for this thing, and it just adds to the story that he was trying to tell with this. So ultimately, I like the way that this film presents this majority cast as such, and it's got that epic flair to it of like, oh my gosh, that cameo. It's like a who's who of major players in Hollywood in that time frame. And they wanted to be a part of something that was like respectful to the Greatest Generation, right? I'm sure a lot of them had family members that served or knew people that served. So this is kind of their love letter to that in a much way that a lot of the people worked on Saving Private Ryan and beyond have done for that.
I just didn't know you could show Adrian Brody for that amount of minutes and he would not be talking.
Well,
that was
Greg,
news to me.
Greg, this is why he always makes sure to talk a lot. He's like, this could be cut.
That's right.
So I need to make sure I keep going. To give a little bit, I'm no Terrence Malick master historian or anything in the way that Anthony does a lot about World War II, but I have seen 2 other Terrence Malick movies, and it's the 2 before this one, which are from the 70s, Badlands and Days of Heaven. And I do think that part of the hype that got me to go see this in the theaters is part of maybe all of this feedback, and somewhat, in some sense, part of what the movie maybe became. Is so Malick was one of the first successful people from AFI, the American Film Institute. He did like an MFA director thing, did some like small directing, and then he got money like partially on his own, like he borrowed it from like medical people he knew, like doctors and dentists, to give him money, and he had savings of like $20,000 to start to make Badlands. And the type of filming approach that Anthony is talking about, I guess at least he always has done in that across these 3 movies. I can't speak to after that. I haven't seen any movie after Thin Red Line. But he films for like a year, and his crew keeps leaving because they're like, dude, we're never going to finish this movie. And they get mad at him, and he gets into fights because he's like, setting up this shot for hours, and then he goes off because he sees like a window he wants to shoot for like during the time that the light's right. But the movies came out and they were quite successful. And this is sort of new Hollywood era. Badlands comes out in 1973. And it stars Martin Sheen and Sissy Spacek as sort of a Bonnie and Clyde. They're supposed to be like teenagers who go on a murder spree, but it's very like dreamy and arty. Like if the style is not super different from what we have here. So think about a like young, like think about how Oliver Stone did Natural Born Criminals, and that's the Oliver Stone style. Think of the Thin Red Line style, but a story like that. And it's like just a lot of people sitting around in a field and thinking about things and then killing someone. And so that happens, and people are like, wow, this is actually really good. We like this. And then it takes him 5 years to make his next movie, between getting funding, taking forever to film it because he decides he will only shoot during the magic hour, which is the time in dusk when the sun is at like the right light. And so he exclusively films his next movie entirely in the magic hour, and it takes him like almost 2 years to film it. And that comes out, it wins the Oscar for cinematography. It's called Days of Heaven. Yes, as Jen just noted in the chat, that was referenced in the studio, or something like that is talked about in the studio. And so he does that, and people are like, wow, this is great. He's a nightmare to work with, but he makes these great movies. Like, he has like this quirky thing. And then he starts to, I'm going to make a movie about the Elephant Man. And then Mel Brooks and David Lynch make a movie about the Elephant Man first. And he's like, oh, okay. And producers come to him and say, we want you to do whatever you want. And he was like, what I first want you to do is to give me money for an apartment in Paris with my wife. And they said, okay. And he didn't do anything for a decade, because he was like, I'm going to live in Paris with my wife. And that's not fully true, because he was like writing stuff and coming up with things, but he basically took the producer's money to like live the life he wanted to live, which, okay, like I'll do credit for that. And then they came back in like the late 80s and were like, okay, well, what if you actually did something? And like, we just funded one of your projects. And he said, okay, I have a script for the Thin Red Line. And it was 300 pages, which for people who don't know is like 2.5 movies worth, which is how you end up maybe with, I mean, the initial cut of any movie is very long and feels really big, but like, yeah, that is a mini series. That is, a minute per page is the general screenplay rule. So it ended up with a very long screenplay, and he started sort of formulating through the early to mid 90s that he was really going to do this. He started scouting. They got like a movie studio to back it. And all of these actors who grew up with like either were a part of New Hollywood or grew up like loving New Hollywood. So think about Sean Penn, think about George Clooney, people that were like, oh my, yeah, John Travolta, who were, John Travolta's nominated for Best Actor the same year Days of Heaven wins cinematography. So they're like, yeah, I want to work with that guy. He's a legend. He hasn't done anything. Like, he's this weird, secret, like crazy auteur. It's like J.D. Salinger coming back from being a recluse to suddenly do something, and you get to work with him. So if you go to the Wikipedia and look at the folks, it's De Niro, Pacino, Gene Hackman, Leonardo DiCaprio flies up from Romeo and Juliet to meet with Malick to try to like advocate to get a part, and it doesn't work for him. And there's just like a ton of people who try to get a part. And so he has all these people he can work with, and they're like amazing. And he also has this like big idea, all the big ideas Anthony's talking about. And he has a production company that is like, please just do anything, like, because we've already put a bunch of money in with you. So yeah, he's off and just shooting for whatever it is, like 8 or 9 months, and doing all of his weird approaches and setting all this stuff up. And he has like so many characters. He basically it feels like even 5 years later, they would have been like, let's just make this a miniseries and sell it to HBO.
Yeah.
And this isn't, instead of the Pacific, we get this. We get the Thin Red Line version of a miniseries. And maybe it's not as popular, but it could have all of these stories in it. So yeah, then it's like editing it down. And as Anthony said, it's a lot of editing. I mean, the editor was there in filming in the, it's I guess mostly Australia, but they do some things in the Solomon Islands, and a couple things like some of the beach things that are on a beach are happening in California. And the editor is there the whole time, but never talks to him. He's always like doing something else. So she's just sort of cataloging what's happening and working on that. So then they're editing it. And I think, it's partially that he wants it to be impressionistic, and he wants it to be, I do think he wants it to be that sometimes you can't tell who people are, especially in the voiceovers. There's like 3 characters with thick Appalachian accents, and it's just sort of like, like you'll figure out which one's talking when I finally like leave the camera on one of them for a while. And you can see which one of them is having this philosophical rumination. I think that it is intentional. I also think it's somewhat the fact of like, he just had so much stuff that it got cut down. I do understand, especially in the wake of Saving Private Ryan, where there is a tight, clear, delineated group of like, we have one main character and we have one sort of target character in Private Ryan, and then we have, what is it, like 6 or 7 members of the group that's going out to do it. And it's like, yeah, this is what we're doing. We're following this group of people and we really get to know all of them. And they meet folks along the way, but no one's ever like, why is Ted Danson only in Saving Private Ryan for 5 minutes? In the way right. In the same way they say that about the actors in this movie. That's partly the name. And that's also partly that, like, it's hard to grab onto the younger people in this movie. And that's partly because they're expendable, fungible tokens for the war machine to do stuff. And so, you know, I mean, I would say, Anthony, how do you pronounce his name? Jim?
Caviezel?
Caviezel, thank you. Like, he's clearly the main character in a way I didn't understand the first time I watched it. I'm like, oh, we start with him. We basically end right around his death. And he seems to have the core philosophical musings of this whole thing. But I think, you know, again, when I saw it half asleep, I was just like, I don't know who anybody is. And I don't know who's the main character. But like, that's cool. But I can understand why they didn't like it. But I think that's also, that in the end, that's what makes this different. And it's both sort of a result of the process, a result of the meta reality in which Terrence Malick was returning to movies, and also the intent of some of the philosophical concepts.
Well, I would say even with the Wit book ending, which I agree is the closest we get to a main character, but I feel like even then his death isn't the end of the movie. There's like 20 more minutes at least after, you know what I mean? Like it's like another more conventional version of the story would fade to black after everyone's standing around his grave that they just dug, right? Or we'd end with Sean Penn crying at his grave or whatever, right? And then it would be cut to black, end of credits. But no, the movie just like keeps going after that in a way that like really decenters him as the, like, oh, like you thought he was the main character and now the story's over. Nope. The life goes on, like other things happen. Which again, really unconventional and cool choice. Does anyone have a favorite performance or character like that fits this criteria of like we're with them for a fleeting moment? So maybe everyone other than Wit.
I'm still stuck on PT pointing out that both Cheers cast members do the same thing in the different movies. So sure, I'll go Woody Harrelson. It's always good to see him show up and be just a little high, probably. What were you really going to answer?
I thought someone in their opening was going to quote him and be like, "I blew off my butt."
Well, I like the Woody one again because that is that breaking down of this greatest generation myth that they could do no wrong, right? And then it's like this guy that actually kind of has the idea of what he's doing, right? He's not the guy that carries the BAR that's like, my stomach hurts, I can't go over the hill. And then the soldier of fortune blows off his own butt and dies. Like that's.
And also, like,
crazy.
while he's kind of hiding, like that, like his whole group is like, we're gonna wait here until we get
like, we'll just wait, we'll get there eventually, right? We'll figure this out. To answer the question of that like random cameo character that fits this bill here, I think Jared Leto really stands out for me because of his baby face, right? He represents that like fresh off the boat, never seen combat before, somehow like a corporal and ordering people to their deaths, right? I love that look on his face when he sends 2 people forward and then they both get shot and then it just cuts right back to his eyes and he's like, oh, holy cow, I'm responsible for that. Like you could see the immediate processing in his face and wow, how many people that were 19, 20 just drafted and went through 6 months of basic training then put on the front lines had to make a similar choice like that back in the day. This isn't, high school teacher through 3 campaigns, Tom Hanks sending people on this mission here, right? This is it shows that arguably the more real case of what would be of these very young kids just survived the depression, very starved of food and chose the army for a variety of reasons, whether drafted or, hey, it offers 3 square meals a day and a paycheck and I'll take it. And this is a, that's one that always stands out for me. And also as time goes on, it's an even funnier cameo. Cause I'm sure at the time like, oh, this is even prior to American Psycho. right? So like I don't even know if he really done too much, and even before 30 Seconds to Mars. So like
this is my
gross.
so-called life erasure. This
Yeah.
is crazy. He was on a prominent high school show.
Again 3 at that time. So
but the important reason for that is that would also be Jasmine's answer, because she has had a big thing for Jared Leto based on My So-Called Life. And so she watched all Jared Leto movies, like anything Jared Leto was in. So she was like, I was watching this movie. She's like, oh, I've seen this movie. I'm like, you have? She goes, yeah, I watched it for Jared Leto. And I was like, you did? And then we get to the Jared Leto part. She was like, yep, I watched this whole movie for that.
At least it's early on.
About like 45 seconds. Yeah, like in the first third of the movie.
The Clooney fans really had to wait.
And then she went to take a nap. Yeah. I was like, yeah, you enjoy the rest of the movie. I've seen it before. I think that my favorite, and I don't know if it is a good performance. It's also sort of how incongruous it is from who I think of him, is probably John Cusack, because he kind of has like a hero. He has a hero moment. He kind of gets to be the guy who, like, he shows up. He's Nick Nolte's like assistant, right hand man, like he's the guy that Nick Nolte likes because he's
favorite
like
son.
Huh?
He's just like a favorite son.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. But and he's mad at
anybody that's not the captain.
Yes, we'll see if Anthony can correct my pronunciation on this, but I think it's Elias Koteas, not Elias.
Yeah.
Elias Koteas. Of course, Casey Jones from the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie. We all know that. But that's how I will always think of him, is Casey Jones leading this troop in World War II and being like, we can't just run up. So John Cusack comes in and like, he's very noble, but it's also weird to think of John Cusack as like leading a charge. Like, he still reads as Lloyd Dobler to me in this, even though this is more Grosse Pointe Blank era. It's Martin Blank, not Lloyd Dobler. But anyway, I think he does a really good job in that scene where he's trying to be like, sir, like, please don't give me any commendations. Please give commendations to everybody else. And I want to let you know what they should be, kind of implied, before I die in case I get shot. Mm-hmm. And also, we need water, and you need to actually get water. And I don't want to hear your bravado. I think he does a really good job with that. And I even watching it this time, I was like, he sticks around, right? He's in a bunch of the rest of the movie. Nope, that's it. That's his entire part.
That's all he needs to be.
Which I think is good. Yeah.
He was really the one where I was like, when during that scene you're describing, I was like, wait, where did I miss John Cusack's in this? I was like, how did I miss that? And then he was gone.
Well, and I also loved John Cusack, and for me, sorry, PT, our age difference, it's High Fidelity for me, always and forever, one of my favorite movies. And so I was like, wait, and this is like just before, if not the movie right before High Fidelity, but somewhere there on his career. And I really was like, wait, is this the last good John Travolta performance, right? Like, he goes downhill really fast after this, right? Battlefield Earth is by 2000, and then all of his made for streaming movies after that cut to him being Santa Claus doing parodies of the Grease Lightning song. And yeah, what happened to him? Yeah, I cannot decipher the faces the three of you are making. I'm like either wildly right or wildly wrong, and
you're more right than I wanted you to be. I think it's really dependent upon how you feel about his performance in Hairspray. That's the only one that steps out to me as maybe being like, that's a good John Travolta performance. And maybe he also could have done something on TV that was any good.
Well, and this would have been like, you got the Face Off and the Broken Arrow, like all that run of big action movies.
Is Michael the one where he's an angel?
Yes.
Yeah.
I had completely forgotten about that movie. That movie was
which is not
huge
to the phenomenon where he has psychic powers, which came out the same summer.
Right.
But like, he was a huge star in those movies. Like all those we just name checked seemed like silly in hindsight, but they were all big releases. And then it's like, oh, he's here. Like, well, and this is well established in our conversation now. But again, it's like everybody recognizable as an officer who's like standing far apart. Mm-hmm. And then the people that Leo point at are like, because they're on their way up. And I think that's just so smart as a device. And so to see him here, and it's not like it's an amazing part, but I was like, oh, John Travolta, that's kind of cool. And then I never saw him again. Swordfish was not good, Jen.
Okay. Well,
There's one reason why teenage boys went to see Swordfish, and we should not mention it out loud on a podcast.
I might have put it in the chat, but that's okay.
Lucy and I were in the same space. All right.
I do want to know. I mean, it is a friend of mine just texted me about Swordfish, and we were talking about Crime 101, and Swordfish came up because that's how things were if you were of that age and of that sexual orientation, I guess. I just want to note, I also love High Fidelity, but I think John Cusack looks older in that movie than he does here and in Grosse Pointe Blank. Like those couple of years, I think he also kind of aged himself up to be a different character. So I just wanted to make sure my love of High Fidelity is joined in with yours. That's true. And I do think John Travolta's performance in this is really interesting because it really feels like he is intentionally performing his, one scene, but he kind of gives a really long speech as if he's seducing Nick Nolte. Like it feels like he is trying to be like I'm trying to lure you in to do this in a way that, like, considering the career of John Travolta, the personal life of John Travolta, the religious orientation of John Travolta, feels like he wouldn't want to sign up for like a one scene role in a movie where he's trying to seduce another man. But it does feel like that's what's happening, and he does a great job of it. And it really kind of sets, we can say there's not a lot of plot in this, but I mean, there is a core plot, and it is a sort of classic war. The upper levels of the military want this thing done, and the further down you get to the soldier ranks, the clearer it is that that's an impossible request, and it's going to lead to a lot of people dying. And John Travolta is the top person, I think, that we see who tells Nick Nolte, who then becomes the sort of force pushing for all of this in the actual battle and the aftermath. So that's again, for a short performance, it's very interesting, and an interesting sort of parallel and contrast in the movie to George Clooney, who isn't given that much to do, but whatever, is, as this sort of like, I'm the voice of authority who comes from above, and this is how it's done. It's so, to Anthony's point, which is Terrence Malick's point. Terrence Malick referred to the Garden of Eden a lot, it seems, when discussing the movie, that John Travolta is very clearly the serpent coming in to like lure people in to this fall.
Well, it also sets up the Nick Nolte character's storyline, right? Because like they establish pretty clearly that he like, and it's sticky, right? Because he's like ordering all these men to their death, and how much of that is because he's trying to grab that glory, right? Like that he's in it for it to. He's been passed over so many times, and he's really tried to kind of climb up the ladder and has not been that successful. And then that's what's driving. He's like, no, this has to work because I have, and like. So I could see the through line there, at least for that character. And I think, yeah, you're right. Like the Travolta performance does feed into that. Like, I think when I was watching it, I turned to my husband, John, and I was like, why does Nick Nolte keep following John Travolta around? Like, it's very uncomfortable. And he's like, well, like he's trying to kiss up to him so he can get promoted or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay. That makes sense.
He's been passed up too many times.
Yeah. He never had a war. He didn't have his own war.
He didn't have a war. That's right. This is his one shot.
Line is, that monologue is rough. Yeah. Just in terms of like, this is so dark and bleak, like that you're saying these things.
I will say, Jen, to your question, I took it as like, who is like a one or two scene character that was a favorite. I left this viewing of the movie being like, oh, Nick Nolte's the best part of it. Like, I mean, or at least that was like, he was standing out to me the most. If there were, we'll get to it later. If there were to be an acting performance, singled out and nominated, I would think that it could be Nick Nolte. He was in a strong candidate for a lead Best Actor Oscar this year for a different movie called Affliction. Oh. So I think that's why. Wait, no, maybe not Affliction. That's James Coburn won Supporting Actor. I don't know. There's a movie that Nick Nolte was being nominated for, so I think he was campaigning for something else. But it feels like he could have gotten a nomination here.
I can't believe no one said Dr. Steve Brule himself, John C. Reilly, who is quite often in this movie. Come on, guys.
Yeah. It was funny to see him as a dramatic actor again. Obviously, he has many important dramatic roles, but even in something like Boogie Nights, he's really humorous, right?
Yeah. And the star of Magnolia too, also in that case.
Yeah. I do recall it being the guy from Boogie Nights when I saw this movie. I do remember that because
that's how you all see it, and then I see, hey, Dewey Cox,
one of the two stepbrothers.
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So what's next? I'll let dealer's choice. So do you want to talk about Miranda Otto some more after Greg made a bunch of jokes about her, or
A bunch? That was just one.
or just
It was
one? I
one,
guess.
but
I
it
don't know.
landed really hard. Well, can I just say, Jen, there's an easy behind the scenes answer for Miranda Otto. She signed a 4-picture contract to be in a movie where she's one of 2 women in a cast of 1,000 men, and they only had 3 Lord of the Rings movies. So they were like, all right, we got to give her Thin Red Line. That isn't true.
Attractive.
Jen went
That was
way along with that and was doing the math in her head.
It was like,
I
I
wait a
she
minute.
I saw her
He's
thinking to
making a
reach
joke.
to Google like film. Miranda Otto, Fellowship of the Ring? Like, she's not in that one. I don't know. Anyway, that was the joke.
I just remember, and this is not going to make air. Jen and I had a friend in grad school who, like, Miranda Otto was on his like celebrity hall pass list, and I was like,
I get it.
she's only in that one, and like, okay, and maybe he was a big fan of Thin Red Line. I don't know.
He was the lieutenant in the Air Force that she goes with.
Yeah. He actually looks like a lieutenant in the Air Force.
All right, I guess we're talking about this now. So let me just set up the actual question. So we get, she basically never says anything until the end of the movie, but we are constantly cutting away to like idyllic memory scenes of her, presumably from, is it Bell is the soldier's name, his perspective,
Yep,
right?
Private Bell.
I guess like, what is that contributing to the story? Why are we doing that so often? Is it really just to kind of like, I mentioned the gut punch of like the letter that he reads where she's like, actually, I met somebody else. And you're just like, oh, that's like the worst possible outcome for this character. Anyway, but it's like, give me your thoughts on that part of the movie.
So I think, again, it's to dispel this myth of the greatest generation, right? Like they all had loved ones back at home that were waiting for every letter and stopped their lives entirely, or just went to the factories and did the work, and all our boys went off and then came back home, and then they got married and had a lot of children that are now still in positions of power in this country. It really just adds to that deconstructing of what this film is trying to do, and just say like, war really sucks and it pulls everyone apart. And this guy that thought he had a great marriage and that was keeping him going through this thing is actually, nope, he hit rock bottom now because of that. Like this is a film that really just tries to pull everyone to the brink of what is their rock bottom, and that's, for Private Bell at least, is his. Right? How many people got Dear John letters like this during the Second War? Probably many. And even I know there's a book about the myth of the Greatest Generation, tries to dispel all this, that is really, really well done. And they had arguably some of the highest divorce rates after the war, like even higher than today, because so many people just got married. So like, oh, I could die tomorrow. Well, might as well get married and I get paid an extra $25 or something like that for some hazard pay. And then if I do die, you get the money, kind of deal. Or it's nice to have a pen pal they'll respond to me every so often when I'm stuck in a foxhole, that kind of deal. So again, it just adds to that, the tragedy that is the war, and the Second World War in particular, they're trying to dispel here, because that was a lot of people's lifelines, was getting a letter every now and then. Like that kept them going, because people, it's not like Vietnam where you sign up for a tour and you're there for 3 months, 4 months, however long you signed up for. If you got drafted in 1941, 1942, you signed up, you were there for the rest of the war. You either got discharged medically or the war ended. Like those were your only 2 ways of getting out of this thing if you were in a combat position. So unfortunately for Private Bell, he's now going to have to look for other sources of inspiration to keep him going, as the 25th Division will go on to other campaigns in this war.
I mean, a couple of things came to mind for me. One was just, it was also chaste, which surprised me, because it's like memories, and it felt like, all right, just a horny young guy missing his babe. But at the same time, it was like maybe like a couple kisses. I don't even remember them kissing much. Like she dramatically fell backward on the bed, which is suggestive. But I was thinking that made it feel, in the kind of Garden of Eden sense, like this is not a sinful or a lustful relationship. It is like devotion in that regard, or some such. But I think that's probably the piece that felt the most problematic for me, because it just, It's like, okay, she's clearly only here for his characterization, not for her own. And, another movie of this ilk around this time, a few years later, I guess 3 years later, would have been Pearl Harbor, where they really try to build up the nurses as a separate plot line. But everything in that movie feels hokey, but like it really just feels like, okay, we got to check all the boxes and make sure that we have something for all 4 quadrants as a part of this. And I'll take a point of personal privilege and share my favorite story from my family is my grandfather and my grandmother on my dad's side. They were dating when he joined the army in World War II, and he got on leave and he lived, I think 3 towns over from my grandmother. And he, got the family car and drove to go went to go visit her. And on his way up, it's kind of on the other side of a mountain. So he drove up the mountain to go over to see her, and he found a hitchhiker, and he picked up the hitchhiker, and he's like, "Oh, where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, I'm on leave. I'm going to see a girl." And my grandfather's like, "Yeah, me too. Like, whereabouts?" And they were both going to see my grandmother, right? And so my grandfather drove all the way to my grandmother's house. The 2 men got out of the car. I cannot imagine what my young grandmother thought. And as my grandmother told it, she talked to the other gentleman and told him he misunderstood, and he left, and she stayed with my grandfather. And as my grandfather always told it, that's because I was the one with the car, and like she really had the right choice. So
chicks dig cars.
But yeah, so it kind of felt like that moment to me, and it made me smile thinking of them and what they lived through.
That's a great story, Greg. I'm sure your grandfather dined out on that for the entirety of
I
their
won.
relationship. Be like, well, maybe you can call that a hitchhiker and see if he wants to go to this movie. I don't really have much to add. I agree with the sort of like she sort of only exists as a, it feels like it could just as easily have been like a pet dog or like a tree I really liked. Like it's just a thing you miss from home. Well, it's Terrence Malick. Of course, it could be a tree. But like, still, I think there's something useful there. Partially because it was like, again, I have Ben Chaplin right in the bullseye of guys I can't tell apart from other people, which is partially because I also thought he was a different actor entirely who's not in this movie. One of the few young actors, a guy who's on Mad Men and Twin Peaks, whose name I don't recall. I'll have to look it up. It's Pete or something. And I was like, oh, that guy's in the movie. That guy from Mad Men. But it's not him. It's Ben Chaplin again. And so like he would be like, and he'd have his photo or he'd be talking and have a little flashback. I'd be like, right. It's the guy with the girl. Got it. Thank you. Thank you for pinning that guy down for me in this movie. I thought that was useful. I also do think there's something to the like, what do we have? Like, we don't have anything besides ourselves as like a philosophical element here. And that like, any sort of belief in the greater cause, any belief in, the other world that you might have pictured, any belief in a higher power or in a loved one is not going to help you when you're staring down these battles and this situation. So, in that sense, like, maybe it felt inevitable that it was going to end up with like, yeah, she's not staying. Like, you're going to survive, but you're not going to have this thing because if you were holding on for her, that's not what you have. You don't control that. You only have yourself.
I think I started to get suspicious because I think the saturation of the color in her scenes shifts at some point. But before, I want to say he gets the letter where it goes from being very kind of like pastel-y, almost stone washed, kind of like it's a little blurry because it's dreamy, and then there's a shot of her, like either there's one of her sitting on a bed and like one of her standing outside of a building, I want to say, where the coloration suddenly is like very brown and so that I think I might be getting the order mixed up, but I want to say like I started to get suspicious like around what, like the progression of the like quote supposed flashbacks to her started to shift in tone a little bit, and I was like, wait a minute, like what's gonna happen? But it also kind of I like the point we made earlier about breaking the myth of like the letter writing, and everyone is writing these like romantic letters, because I feel like so many movies do that, right, where it's like there's the voiceover scenes are of people like the epistolary conversations that people have back and forth. But I think this one, both with this storyline with Belle, but then also there's the scene where like that one guy dies and then he's like, so you're going to write to his girl, right? And the other guy's like, what? No. Like, what?
Did you just say that? That's Woody Harrelson, right? It's Woody Harrelson.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Right. Which kind of, again, like kind of just deflates that romantic notion that we have about what soldiers did during this time. All right. Well, so Anthony asked a bunch of really great questions in our outline, so I want to make sure we get to those. So we still haven't really talked about the film's title, The Thin Red Line. What kind of interpretation do we have of that? Like, what meaning does that hold in the context of the film? I know it is the title of the book has the same title.
Mm-hmm, correct.
Right. But even still, they chose to keep it.
I mean, I'm very like nerdy as the like I finish a movie and then I'm on the Wikipedia page and I'm just clicking a lot. I'm clicking through a lot of things, so I know where the title is from. I don't know if that's.
Do you want?
Well, I don't know if Anthony wants to share. It's his.
No, enlighten us, PT.
So it's again, it is the title of the book by James Jones, but is a reference to a Rudyard Kipling poem from 1890 called Tommy. And it is called Tommy because like Tommy was like a nickname for a generic soldier. It was just sort of like, the Tommy, a British soldier. And the poem is basically like as a soldier, like he goes around and like no one respects him or cares about him. And no one is like interested in like giving him something free or like giving him a leg up despite his service until the drum beat starts and we need war. And then suddenly you're part of the Thin Red Line because the redcoats. And so suddenly you're heroes. Suddenly you're people who are out there. And he's like, but if I want someone to help me, like get a house, if I want someone to like pour me a beer at a pub, they're like, who are you? Why are we going to do that? So the actual, let's see, where's the actual line? And it's in very like I can't remember the term for it, my fellow English majors, but it's in the sort of slang writing, like it's written in the accent. So I apologize.
Vernacular.
Let's go with that. Sorry. Well, according to Wikipedia, the colloquial style of English, but yes, the vernacular. So yes, make and mock uniforms that guard you while you sleep is cheaper than them uniforms, and they're starvation cheap. And hustling drunken soldiers when they're going large a bit is 5 times better business than parading in full kit. Then it's Tommy this and Tommy that and Tommy, how's your soul? But it's Thin Red Line of heroes when the drums begin to roll. So that's the idea of sort of I assume they're pulling from of this sort of like you're nothing to them, but until we need bodies to throw out in the front lines.
I'm just embarrassed for you that you admit you had to look that up. I knew that off the top of my head. Sure. Every bit of it. I could have recited that without reading it.
19th century British poetry was your concentration.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's actually very telling, and I think that also helps us explain what we were all thinking about, the kind of cross-war like resonances of this. Is everything you just described feels very much like the present day. We don't want to make light of the realities of war, but in America today, so few families are actually sacrificing as a part of who's serving, and they are so far removed from the people who make those decisions. In the vast majority of cases, there's been studies about this that have demonstrated that this makes war easy and cheap, even when it's human lives, never mind when it's drones and not thinking about this. I will say, my answer before PT gave the right answer, I was thinking much more about the line between kind of what makes you human and what makes you an animal, right? Like the thin red line of humanity, meaning what prevents you from becoming there. And for me, in the philosophical realm, some of those later passages where they say, like, we're just beasts, like, we're just there, it felt to me like that resonance was sticking with me a little bit more than some of the class differences, even because again, I mean, the themes we've been talking about all night, that we dress it up as heroism, and we dress it up. I mean, this actually is just the poem too, again, which I knew again before PT read it. But it really just reminds us that all of that is just a lot of justification and a lot of bizarre rhetoric, when the reality of it is there's never a reason why we have to murder each other. We could
Mhm.
find other ways to do things on this planet. This planet full of bats and snakes and cool trees and leaves
Don't forget a gator.
and a
Or is that a
gator.
crocodile? I don't know.
Crocodile, I believe,
Crocodile,
based on what
technically?
part of the world it is.
It looked pretty big, so reminded me of the gators we have around here.
The crocodile is actually more of the bookend of the movie than Wit is,
It's true.
You could
right?
argue.
Because
Yeah.
the
Starts at the beginning.
first
Beginning.
shot of the whole movie is a gator in the wild, or crocodile in the wild, and then towards the end, there's a shot of it all tied up and bound, right? Which that smells like metaphor to me. I don't know what everyone else thinks about
in
that.
this film, never.
Yeah. I mean, in the whole movie, is that's not a knife. This is a knife. Back
Can't
and
believe
forth
that wasn't
between the two
edited out.
sides.
How did that make the final cut?
Yeah, I sort of saw Thin Red Line as the line between sanity and insanity. This movie is closer to Apocalypse Now than Saving Private Ryan in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but I wasn't thinking quite that far, right? Of like, it doesn't get surrealist at any point, but I do feel like there's kind of like a breaking point for a lot of these characters where they, like, I'm thinking of the guy who's pulling out all the gold teeth out of the dead bodies,
Mhm.
and then he just like is convulsing and then throws the bag away from him because he's so disgusted with what he did. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, what's the line between that? Like, how do you, what happens when soldiers cross that line, right?
Mhm. I would like to add, sorry, I want to get to Anthony's answer or additions for this for sure. But we've been making all our jokes about the physical media and the version of that. But the cover of the Criterion version, I've just linked to the photo. It's a little hard to see when Anthony holds it up. It's designed to look like it's the line. There's a line in the middle of it. That's
like the page of the book
in a magazine. So it's like you're looking at the magazine spread of like a Life magazine talking about this battle. And so in a way, it's almost like that this cover at least is sort of just like, what's the truth in between the stories we tell?
Right.
Like what's the actual like stuff that happens in between these nice.
Right. What's the elision
images.
of the, in the middle of the crack, like
Yeah.
the crack in the crease in the page, right?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I like that a
It's
lot.
a very cool cover. Physical media, man. So good.
Every July or so, Criterion does a half off sale, or
true.
sometimes they do a flash sale if you get the emails. And boy, that becomes a really cheap Blu-ray if anybody wants it. Highly recommend. Just to add, because I think everyone's hit this on the nail here, and I really like where this conversation has gone. I do agree, just in general, about what it means about this, like sanity versus like the loss of humanity that war does to us, right? I see it also as it being like you're either a wit or you're a Welsh, right? In terms of the privates, right? Not necessarily just becoming a person from Wales. Whereas, Wit has that spark still. He hasn't lost his humanity. He still sees the joy in life. He appreciates nature, right? He wants to embrace this immortality that comes with that. Whereas Welsh is on his own. He's singular. He wants that jadedness, right? He's like, oh, I can't wait for that feeling of being, looking at dead bodies and not caring at all, right? He's yearning for that in this story too. Whereas Wit never really loses that, which I appreciate. And then there's the other interesting part of that too, where the Thin Red Line can also, in since the original reference to it, has also meant like a band of soldiers that are outnumbered, right? Facing insurmountable odds, right? And it's interesting, in like I was noting to historical context, is that these Japanese soldiers that are left here are like a bare bones force that are just like the left behinds, right? They're the ones just meant to draw out the campaign a little bit longer. They're malnourished. They're starved. They're the ones that are the outnumbered forces that are just kind of a few and far between fighting these bunkers. And when they like eventually overcome that bivouacked area and they just kind of run through the remainder of the camp there, like you can really tell how malnourished, and like they probably haven't eaten more than just a couple of scraps rice and maybe a couple of the animals they've probably hunted down in the jungle that was edible throughout for the last couple of weeks here. Like they're the opposite side here. Like who's the conqueror, who's the conquered, right? It's not that idea of we're coming in and saving the day kind of deal here. It's like, oh, this is who we beat, was like these people are barely walking and are starving, and they're just barely making it to tomorrow. Wow, what a hollow victory! Like even they, after weeks of theoretically fighting the siege and all that coming out here, who knows how long this actually took. There isn't really a joy in the victory, except for Nick Nolte. He's the one like, let's keep going, let's do it, guys. Everyone else is just sitting there defeated. Like they won this victory, and that's really, I mean, to quote Yoda, "War does not make one great," right? And that's again the thesis of all this.
You just reminded me, the other war movie trope that's missing here is the call and answer cheering, right? The like, we're gonna go do it, and then everyone's like, yeah, right? Like that's never gonna happen in this movie. All right, so we've set this up nicely with talking about kind of loss of sanity, loss of humanity. But what do you think, according to this movie, is the nature of evil? And I'm assuming the word nature here is very purposeful in your question, Anthony. But wait, what do we think? Like, what is this movie's moral compass? Is it just kind of, if there are no heroes, then where are we?
So I would define evil as a lack of empathy. And I think that is throughout this film for the aggressors, whether it's the Americans or the Japanese, right? The destructive path of war leaves everyone in this state of decay. People lose their willingness to care for others, right? You mentioned, Jen, the guy that's going around just taking teeth, right? He doesn't even have the caring that there's another human being right beside him there. They're just stacking bodies up. There's no reverence for any of that, right? And then it even comes down to just like, oh well, we'll take out some of these creatures here. We'll lock up this gator, this crocodile. That's pretty cool, right? There's just a lack of care for anything that is physical, right? And even there's the sequence that stands out to me, right? That's like at the beginning where they just call in that artillery barrage. So he's like, well, no, it won't do anything, but it'll be a great moral victory for the crew, for the guys on the ground to see like, oh, we're beating them, we're killing them, right? But those bombs do land on something, right? Whether it's animals that are reptiles, whatever is in the foliage, right? The grass itself is living earth, right? It's breathable. It's a part of the ecosystem of the world, and we're destroying that. War just leaves everything in its path in a worse state than it was before. And that's, again, what this movie comes at is like, wow, we start at the beginning, which is this like level of Eden, right? The picturesque group of community of people living outside of this space. And then you see a similar village later on that is fully like embraced because of the war, right? They see the war around them. It's affected them. They're struggling. They're fighting in between one another as well. And Whit sees the before and the after of that. And what's the difference? One had war on their shores and the other one didn't. And that can be a thesis statement alone for this thing, is like, what does war do to us? It doesn't leave us any better, that's for sure.
And the only follow-up I have is a technicality. Is it not the same tribe?
No.
But okay. Is it because it's some of the same performers? I think because
I'm sure they are, but it's okay. Not the same. Yeah, it would be a different island in the chain that the Japanese didn't have a presence on before they landed on Guadalcanal proper.
Right, because the first one they imply is like pretty far from where Whit is supposed to be.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right, because they're like, why? How did this patrol boat get all the way out here?
Yep.
I thought they couldn't find us, and I like how their solution is just to like walk behind a hut. And then they expect no one to find them. Like, it's like, okay.
For those who watch the recent movie Send Help, you'll understand that's what you do on an island if you're trying to not be seen. It's just stand behind a tree much thinner than you, and you should be fine. It should be okay.
And don't walk on mountains.
Yes.
There are a couple other miscellaneous questions that we haven't explicitly got to, but I think we can kind of tackle all of it holistically in thesis, please.
Thesis, please.
Good old party guest. So what do we think this? I mean, we've kind of been answering this the entire time we've been talking in some ways, I think, in terms of talking about how it's portraying war and all that stuff. But like, what else what do you see as the central message or thesis about of this movie? And then what other kind of thematic threads do you want to throw in? Anthony had a question about immortality. I want to talk a little bit more about nature because I do think the cinematography is so critical to kind of like the theming of the movie, in terms of all the shots of nature. But yeah, I'll open it up.
I think Anthony's opening made us think about constructive and destructive narratives, and I think to that I would really emphasize that war is destruction. It's destruction of everything you just listed, Jen, of nature, of goodness, of humanity, of individuals. And when we kind of look at the totality of the film, it feels to me like the real takeaway is that absolutely nothing good is happening, right? And I think that's refreshing, and to me I alluded to this before, but it feels like that's an indictment of those of us who like to go watch rah movies, right? That like rah war movies, I should say, right? That like that, oh, it's so fun and exciting and exhilarating, and it's all those things. But I think Malick is clearly saying when you make this entertainment, you cheapen it and you draw to the foreground everything that's wrong about this, and it's a real inversion of it that to me, as I alluded to before, felt personal. I was like, yeah, it's really getting, oh man, I suck, right? Like really I felt called out by that, and ultimately in a very positive way. I think sometimes, especially modern film goers are like, oh, this made me uncomfortable. I think it's a bad movie, but like I like when a movie makes me uncomfortable and calls me out for the kind of problematic things that I hold dear to. So I felt called out in a very productive way, and that in the end ends up being a generative story because I feel like I'm reassessing everything about what war can be and what it is, and the answer is destruction for me. Not Jen. She loves war.
What is it good for? Absolutely everything. I think all of that there is definitely in there, and that's there for sure. I also feel like, from what, again, relatively little I know about other Terrence Malick movies and projects, is there is like a very sort of like, how do we as individuals exist in a world such as this, and in systems and times that happen around us, sort of social machinations, whether those are actual like institutions or just like inclinations in humanity and in human society. How do we try to how do we try to be? And I think those moments that are the thing that I feel are the most borrowed by other filmmakers. When we talk about Train Dreams, we can talk about Hamnet as well from last year, in movies where it's like, seeming like, it's the camera, but also, it's the characters, but also the camera just sort of stopping to notice like these beautiful things in nature. And I do always think about it's tilting upwards to look up at the trees and seeing the sun on the other side of the leaves and how they move. That there's something that is like, that's the reaching and yearning for something natural that is not human made and therefore sort of human corrupted, and that we can only do that individually. Like we are not capable of doing that as a collective, because for whatever benefits there are in society, I don't know if Terrence Malick thinks there are benefits of society, but whatever benefits there may be, it's like we're the real war is us. It's like trying to fight against the corruptive influence of everyone else, and we're just trying to like actually be with the snake, the crocodile, the bird, the tree, the grass, that we are seeing and noticing, and trying to like not get wrapped up in all that stuff Greg was talking about, which is the war and the destruction, and just how that's going to be able to pull all that down into whatever disaster and nothingness.
Well, I'll add to this mix next, and I just wanted to, before we I maybe get into the immortality piece of this, which I think is the real through line of the movie. I do appreciate so much the scene where the captain denies the order, like says no, and he starts like, all right, I've got my witnesses here. Do you have yours? I suggest you do the same. Like, that's a victory right there. Like, I know this movie doesn't really have a lot of like quote unquote victories, right? That like real wins of like humanity. That's one right there. The not the aimlessly of putting people in front of a pillbox to get mowed down just because some superior officer is like, do it, right? That's the antithesis of like what they do in Saving Private Ryan, right? Where we see the higher ups be like, we are going to get that we're going to get that Private Ryan out. And then it goes all the way down to the squad. And even though they grumble about it, they're like, yep, we'll do it. Fine. And then they talk themselves into why it's a noble mission versus the opposite here, where like you take that hill, like we are not doing it under these conditions. Let's try and do a flanking maneuver. Right. And I will add, I don't know if the scope of this movie is interesting, like I've noted, because of where it sits in the timeline of the Pacific War. But there is something that is inherent in the way that the Pacific War actually was, in the fact that there not only is it a difference of America versus Japan, but it's also a cultural difference of Eastern philosophy versus Western philosophy in a lot of ways, and particularly with Japanese culture and philosophy as well versus the American, right, which is more of the collectivist as the whole on the Japanese side of things versus the individual on the American, right? Whereas, like, for example, we can our troops can question such an order versus you'll see oftentimes the Pacific Theater, right? Because of cultural norms, right? Japanese soldiers being ordered to attack a pillbox and keep going until there is no one left, right? That would be a part of how they would have handled things tactically. But I think the myth is like, oh, we'll do anything over insurmountable odds, right? And then this is arguably the one time in a war film I've ever seen where something like this has happened, where a commanding officer has said, hey, this is actually not a good idea. You are not here right now. You're over a couple, whatever, 100 kilometers, couple kilometers away. You don't know what it's like down here. And then he has that confrontation with them later on. If you had men die in your arms, right, you don't know what it's actually like to be on the front lines here, because he's never been in a war before. And it's easier to make those calls when you're quarterbacking from the sidelines, as opposed to actually the person that's like Jared Leto saying, hey, you two go, and then seeing the choices of your actions have immediate dire consequences right in front of you. I like the Malick juxtaposition of the scene, where it's edited in quite a way that it just goes right to their faces. He talks so calmly and how he responds back versus the getting chewed out on the other end. And Nick Nolte does, like, he's perfectly cast for that type of like commanding officer position. Like, I can't think of any better. I know he's in Tropic Thunder too, and kind of has that same kind of gravitas to that too. But that scene is really well done, and like I was saying, to close this off in a loop, right? That's a win, is saving lives. Humanity wins because of that choice, and I like that the one soldier later on is like, hey, you saved us out there because you did that. Now I know it cost him his job, and I think he's probably thankful that he's actually going to go back to lawyer service in the States because of a made up malaria case and all that. But that's something he can rest his head on, as like, what is war good for? And he's like, well, I saved a few people's lives because I stood up for what I believed in.
But I think what's also complicated about that is that the movie at certain other points sort of implies that the Nick Nolte character is also right. But right in the context of, in using the logic of the American military, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that this is, I think it was PT that used the word systems earlier, like that this is a system that is set up for everyone to be disposable.
Yes.
And for it to be like the chain of command to be so wonky that like if somebody dies, just somebody else comes up in their place, and then everyone has to order everyone else to die and that kind of thing. But because there is like a certain amount of success that shifts once Staros is not in charge anymore. That again, like, I don't agree. I agree with you, what you're saying, but at the same time, I think the film doesn't give us an easy answer about that necessarily, right? It's like, well, they took the ridge or whatever.
That also seems a little bit like a coincidence in that, like, which, I mean, part of what I feel like, although I cannot think of an immediate example, I feel like there are times when there's people, there's a sort of a captain type person who's like, I'm not going to do that. But again, not normally in World War II movies. That feels like a Vietnam or a World War I sort of story about like, no, that's crazy. Like, we can't just do that. But they're like, no, like, do it. Like, I've got my map and I'm seeing how this will be good. But what's interesting is that it's like, no, like you don't understand because you're too far away, and they're like, all right, well, I'm coming. And then the Japanese, like a lot of the Japanese troops retreat from that bunker so that all the firing stops. And by the time Nick Nolte gets there, he's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is fine. Like, we'll just send like 4 guys and they'll go get it. And then they do. And so that doesn't feel like that means that Stavros was wrong, but like Nick Nolte will never know. Like
history will remember.
Yeah.
History will remember one and not the other, basically, right?
Also, just sort of shows how much of it is like just sort of random chance and fate and luck.
The one wrinkle that I want to put into kind of like the interpretation that we're piecing together for this is the opening. I think it's the opening voiceover of the movie where it says, "What's this war in the heart of nature? Why does nature vie with itself? The land contend with the sea. Is there an avenging power in nature? Not one power, but two." And that line like really stayed with me through the entire movie. And in particular, the idea of like, why does nature vie with itself? Like, why is it trying to attack itself or compete with itself? And so like that planted a seed in the back of my brain through the whole movie of like, well, maybe it's not supposed to be necessarily just be a binary between like nature is peaceful and good and beautiful and war is ugly and awful and bad, but that there's a certain amount of that ugliness in nature. And maybe it's just because I rewatched The Wild Robot too recently. But you know what I mean? But this idea, this concept of like nature is inherently cruel, you know what I mean? And there seems to be something there, but I haven't quite pinned it down in terms of like that theme of like, and there was a Letterboxd review that I saw right after I finished watching the movie, and I don't think it was someone I knew necessarily, but it said something like no one, empty space, Terrence Malick, war is really ugly, but it's also kind of beautiful, right? And I feel like there's like that's really funny, and it is again sort of like mocking what we now see as like Terrence Malick's proprietary filmmaking style. But I do think that there is something there in terms of like I think he wants to kind of intertwine the beauty and the ugliness a little bit more than maybe this like it seems like on the surface.
I'll be interested to hear what others have to say on this one, but I go back to the original opening being the crocodile, right, which is a predator in nature, right? Like predators exist, but nature still exists in this harmony of like we have our the rules and the system, right? And even though there's that the Wit's idealized version of things is that community at the beginning, and he asks them like, do you fight? And like, yeah, we still have conflicts and all that stuff, but it seems like they resolve it, right? It doesn't seem like you get to the level of fisticuffs and deciding I'm going to, out of the order of things, which it seems like what war does. It upsets the natural balance of what things are, right? Things rise, things fall. People like life breeds death, like death and then life renewed from it, whatever the Last Jedi line is, right? And that seems to be a more natural way of things and how they go about it, right? Versus war being the destruction of making things happen outside of the bounds of what typically would exist if we all just kind of existed in our normal day-to-day existence, right? How many people these plucked out of that into this fight because of people not being able to talk to each other, right? Wars. How many wars start because of that, right? What treaty signed in 1870 led to World War I that then led to the events of World War I are the precursors to World War II. And then everything beyond World War II is a direct result of that as well. So like all this stems from just being able to communicate as people and existing together and trying to find that natural harmony with each other, which we still haven't been able to really find a good groove yet on, which is, I think, some of the big tragedy here. And at the end of the movie, right, at Wit's passing scene, right, there is that Japanese soldier that's yelling at him or talking to him, and someone has actually done the translation of what that soldier says, which is roughly paraphrasing without having the exact script in front of me here that someone greatly did on YouTube, which is like, hey, I don't want to put your gun down. I don't just surrender. I don't want to do this to you. Like, please do not just don't do something stupid here. I just surrender. Don't go crazy here. Like, and then just because Wit doesn't understand him, right? And I'm sure he's been told the propaganda of, Japanese soldiers will mutilate your body, and he's seen the horrendous things of what war has done to this point. He's like, well, I'm going out here. It's better than whatever they'll do to me later on, and I'm going out on my own terms, similar to that piece that his mother had earlier on, and finally finding that immortality for himself and becoming a part of the land once more. Yeah, it's just tragedy. All this is really just sad to see what it did to a generation of people and usurped the world for so many years, and we're still dealing with the ramifications of it 80 plus years on.
Well, it seems really weird to talk about the Oscars after that beautiful.
But did it get any trophies?
Cue the music, Jen.
It seems so crass after what you just said.
What of any year to talk about like a bloody battle?
Oh, that's true.
Fallouts and long-standing legacies of badness.
That's
Welcome
very true.
to 1998.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I just want to say the message of the movie is we could find a different way. We could choose not to do this. You're acting like it's the natural harmony to have to go to Oscars watch. We could just walk away.
We can keep it. Yeah, we can keep it brief. This received 7 nominations, didn't win any. This is the Shakespeare in Love year.
The rise of Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, that started the sort of like what we know now is kind of like the counter campaigning or anti. What's the actual term that you would use? I said mudslinging in our outline, but
smear campaign.
Yeah,
smear campaigns. Yeah, smear campaigns to compete against other Oscar nominees. But I mean, does anyone have any strong opinions about something that this should have won over something else that actually did win that year? Or
I don't really have any strong opinions that it should have won anything. I'm just curious for the group in the fact that because this existed as well as Saving Private Ryan, like, is this also adding to the factor of why Shakespeare in Love wins? Like, I think that gets lost in the conversation here, is that like, wow, Saving Private Ryan lost to Shakespeare in Love. Who has really watched Shakespeare in Love 30 years later? Even though my wife will tell you I watch it all the time. It's a classic in our house.
I like Shakespeare in Love. I wouldn't have given it Best Picture, but it's a good movie.
So, I mean, I think that's just another thing to add to this, because especially after this Oscar year, right, where you have like Sentimental Value having a lot of people in different categories, and One Battle After Another having, Sean Penn and Benicio del Toro, it's like, oh, did people take away votes from others when they could have won in certain categories? Like, oh, I'm not voting for the 2 World War II films in this category. I'm going to just vote for the thing that's counterculture to that. I don't know, it's an interesting conversation to have. I don't know if we've ever like gotten a breakdown of the votes, but it'd be curious to find out if I ever did that.
There are never
part of me does want to just like save a lot of what I would say for when we inevitably or eventually do the Oscar Fairy flashback episode for this year, right? So
that's fair, but I do want, even though we were like, we could keep it short, or we couldn't, because I want to say a couple things. First, Anthony, love that you had that idea. I also had that thought about like, how come no one's ever been like mad at the Thin Red Line for taking World War II votes and maybe being the difference maker?
Again, it's the forgotten. Back to the original thesis of it's the forgotten one of this year. They forgot how much it impacted the Oscars too.
The category that I thought it would make sense for it to win would have been cinematography. I think it's tough to take it away from Janusz Kaminski, who won for Saving Private Ryan. And then I was looking and I was like, well, Janusz Kaminski had already won. He won for Schindler's List. So there was only 4 Oscar years in between Schindler's List and this one. So did he need to win again? The problem is the cinematographer for The Thin Red Line won 2 of those 4 years. So he had just won twice for Legends of the Fall and Braveheart. So it was sort of a like, who do we give another Oscar to? So I understand how it ended up with Janusz Kaminski. And this is something, again, if Jen is like, we don't want to do this, this is dumb, we could cut all of this. I did come up with a little bit of a little trivia game for Anthony, but Jen and Greg, you can also play. That is Oscar related.
Oh, okay.
And we won't have to take too long on this. There are 8 people in the listed cast of The Thin Red Line who have been nominated for an Oscar. Across 8 of them, there are 8 wins and 26 nominations.
Wow.
Who are they?
Well,
So people who
Brody.
have been nominated.
They have been nominated, and then some of those people also won. So
Okay.
it's not like each of them have won, but it's people who at least got nominated.
Well, I know Brody.
Correct? That's two
Sean
noms,
Penn
2
is the
wins.
most recent
Sean
Penn.
Penn.
winner.
6 nominations.
Jared
3
Leto.
wins. Jared Leto one nomination, 1 win. Correct?
Travolta, did he get one?
He did. He's gotten 2 nominations, no wins. Saturday Night Fever and Pulp Fiction.
Clooney has to be one of
So
them,
did
right?
Clooney get ever any?
Clooney has 8
For
nominations
yeah.
because he's
Yeah.
got a directing and a screenwriting, and also he won one of his 2 wins. He got 2 wins. One was for Syriana, and he won for producing Argo.
Did I get all of them? Did we get all of them?
Woody Harrelson coattail 3 billboards, right?
Yes, Woody Harrelson has 3 nominations.
How could I forget? Oh man,
But there's 2 more people,
Nolte.
and one of them, frankly,
John C. Riley probably
gonna
for
Oh,
Yeah.
Mr. Cellophane.
yeah.
Mr. Cellophane. I was going to say, Anthony, of all people, Dr. Steve Brule himself, you should have remembered John C. Riley.
In what?
Is that it?
In what? What was that?
In Chicago.
Chicago.
He got
Chicago,
nominated
yeah.
for supporting actor. That's another coattail nomination.
Never seen it. Never
Yep.
seen it.
And there's one more person that we've talked about a couple times. Prominent, I think. Maybe I missed
Walter
it.
Cusack?
John Cusack, unfortunately, no, never nominated.
Tim Blake
Should have
Nelson?
gotten screenplay
Tim Blake
nomination.
Nelson.
Tim Blake Nelson not nominated. No, it is Nick Nolte because he's nominated this
Oh,
year.
I said
for
Nolte.
Reflection. Oh, I missed it. Okay, I missed it.
Yeah.
Then yes, Nolte. That's 8. So yeah, Adrian Brody, George Clooney, Woody Harrelson, Jared Leto, Nick Nolte, Sean Penn, John C. Riley, and John Travolta. 26
Interesting.
nominations. 8
Interesting.
wins.
And, hey, we've mentioned Nick Nolte a lot, and nobody has said I have spoken. And I just want to applaud
Wow.
us for
Sure.
that
Wow.
we avoided that.
Do I run a Star Wars podcast? I don't know if I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But didn't you want a vacation from a Star Wars podcast, and that's why you're here?
That's right. PT, quick question for you on the Janusz side of things. Was Saving Private Ryan the first that did the bleaching that Spielberg is known for now?
I can't answer that question right now. I don't know.
Okay, fair
That's
enough.
another way of saying I don't know.
Because I mean, I'm all for the cinematography of that, but of this film, of course. But I think in terms of like a new technique, also that brought into the play, like that could also be why that was brought to the forefront if they campaigned highly on that, much
Right.
like films recently have done.
He had won for Schindler's List, which has it's black and white, and that was such a.
I was like, did Amistad? I can't remember if Amistad
The year
really
before,
tried.
Janusz is nominated for Amistad. I don't know if it has that, but I do think there was maybe just part of it is just like this is a generational pairing of people, and
Yeah.
Spielberg wins director, he wins cinematographer.
It's a big
The
deal.
movie looks great. The one thing you can't really sell Shakespeare in Love on is how it looks so good. It just whatever. The filmmaking is not at the same level as these other 2 movies. I think even Harvey would agree with that. So yeah, I think there was sort of a cumulative award. I don't know if that technique was a part of the campaign so much as just the look at how they recreated this. Look at how they shot it. Like it was so like you were there for the first 20-25 minutes. So. But that would be interesting. That'd be interesting to look into.
All right, I'm pulling the plug. This is Craigslist. Thank you.
Regulator
Thank you.
4K. All right, boys. All
My
right.
basement is so cold tonight. I don't know what's going
Oh,
on. The
no.
spring warm up. So I've been apologies for getting quiet, listeners. I've been huddled down here. You Californians and your Floridians, you don't understand what it's like up here.
You didn't accidentally set off a grenade, right? And that's why you're so cold. You're okay. You didn't blow your butt off.
Oh no. It was unseasonably cold here today. It got below 60 degrees.
It drizzled where I am. Drizzle.
Boy.
Oh.
Whoa.
All right. Well, anyway, Anthony, this was amazing. Thank you for giving us an occasion to, in my case, watch this movie for the first time and to deepen my understanding of it with not only your deep knowledge of the World War II and the historical context, but also just of the film and everything surrounding it. So thank you so much for being here. Where can folks find you? Tell us about Force Ghost Conversations. Plug whatever you want.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and again for allowing me to geek out about my special interest for a couple hours here. My wife greatly appreciates that she was not on the receiving end of this for once. Partially why I started a Star Wars podcast. So, folks, that is what I do on the majority side of when I'm podcasting here. So, yeah, Force Ghost Conversations is the title. It is a cozy deep dive into all things Star Wars and Lucasfilm adjacent properties. So we'll dabble into some things that ILM have done, occasionally a World War II film or two, right? We've done a season on that. We'll talk about Jaws, which we've had the crew on from the Long Take Review on to discuss Jaws itself, and also some individual episodes. And go check out those in the recent history of Force Ghost Conversations, available on all your Spotify's, your Apple Podcasts, and all that stuff. And right now we're in the midst of Maul Shadow Lord season, so we got some great episodes of that, both in the past and upcoming, I imagine, so it's a really good show. And then in a couple weeks, we have this film, you may have heard of it, called The Mandalorian and Grogu. It's based on a TV series successfully from Disney Plus. We'll see how it does in the box office and all that stuff. That'll be a fun conversation to have in a couple weeks. I can't wait for that one. Oh boy. And we look forward to having some great conversations on that front. And I imagine the three on this podcast will be appearing on Force Ghost Conversations in the next couple of weeks and months. So just be on the lookout for that. And of course, we're available on all the social places. Any place you can find social media. Search for Force Ghost Conversations and we'll be there in some capacity.
Amazing. And Greg, where can folks find you other than freezing in your basement?
People can find me mostly these days on Letterboxd, a little bit on Instagram, either place at EyonCanon, EYEONCANON. I'm recapping Maul Shadow Lord on the Rebel Base Card podcast, although I just saw a text message that he's recording tonight without me, so I guess I'm not on this week's, but the rest after.
Sorry, Greg.
Breaking news.
I was two places at once.
Ding, ding. No breakfast for you.
Yeah, and I'll just note I have an exciting week ahead. It's Independent Film Festival here in Boston, so I'm going to get to see I Love Boosters and The Invitation, both of which are not all that far from release. I think they're like a month out from release, but check out my Letterboxd and see my initial impressions on those. Do I have a quick takes in me? I really don't know. It's a very busy time of the semester, but we will do our best. PT! Weren't you on an episode of Quick Takes relatively recently?
Why I was, Greg? I think you might have been there as well. We talked about movies of
I don't recall.
You can go check it out. I don't record as many podcasts as Greg does, so I am more able to recall that we did that. And if you want to know more about that, then you can look up the show on Letterboxd at LTR Pod. You could also look for information about episodes like that on social media. We're at Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at The Long Take Review. You can, if you got feedback about that, you can email us, thelongtakereview@gmail.com. You can also just follow the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Hit add, hit like, hit heart, hit subscribe, hit whatever mechanism it is there. And you can follow the show there. Jen, where can folks find you and read some of your reviews of this latest Star Wars material?
Thank you.
I don't know why I said that so weirdly. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
that was really creepy and ominous for no reason. So folks can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchakchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, including a picture of my cat trying to interfere with my viewing of The Thin Red Line. There's actually a video I'll send all of you later of him just like walking across the screen meowing while the movie is playing, and I was like, come on, man. And you can also find my as PT and Greg won't let me forget, you can find my written reviews of Maul Shadow Lord week to week on thelongtake.substack.com, in addition to all of our episodes. If you want to, because I know there's a little bit of a delay from, like, let's say Substack to Spotify. So if you really want to be the very first people to get a new episode when it drops, it really behooves you to go subscribe on Substack.
What's coming up next week, Jen?
What is? Wait, do we know?
Hey, do people like old movies? Because we're going to watch Devil Wears Prada 1, right?
That's right.
I think that is on the schedule.
No, you're right. You're right. It is.
It is on the schedule. I'm like shaking at the concept of that being an old movie, because I'm like, that came out like 2 years ago. It's like 20 years old, but that's fine.
Yeah. So that will be next. Of course, a big question mark sequel coming out to start off the summer movie season is Devil Wears Prada 2. And I think there's a lot of wondering how many people are going to show back up for this. So we're going to dive back into the first one, which no spoilers, but I think it will be a first time watch for somebody on the call, I believe.
It will be for me.
Yeah.
For both of you?
Yeah.
Oh. All right.
I just have never really confessed to that openly in public before.
I've
watched Devil Wears Prada the way Anthony watched 2025 Superman by James Gunn. I have seen a lot of it on clips, but I have not actually seen the whole movie. Now, I'm not saying I have the same level of animosity. I'm just saying I've seen a lot of clips. I feel like I know what happens in the movie, but I haven't actually sat down and watched it.
And we will reveal live on air which member of the regular crew is actually the editor of a fashion magazine. And my friends, you'll never guess it.
It's very true.
See you next time on the Long Take Review.
We're one big self. Thanks for listening. You can follow the Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free, and you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops. You will also receive occasional written reviews of new Star Wars and Marvel.